Good morning and welcome back to Tactics Board. Norwich City's playoff push continues tomorrow night when they travel to Middlesbrough, and they have been in fine form generally. They're just 1 point outside the Championship's top 6, but they have struggled on the road, and that is the important context going into this. So can they turn around their away form? Can they replicate their performances at Carrow Road? We'll see, but I'm going to give you my predicted 11 for the game and my tactical preview of how it will pan out. The good news on the starting 11 front is that I actually got one right at the weekend. And yes, I do deserve a pat on the back, because David Wagner's starting 11s can be quite difficult to predict at times. But it feels now that with the injuries that he has, as well as the form of certain players, it does feel fairly predictable in terms of what he'll choose. But of course, he has tended to vary those lineups between home and away games. So definitely a variable to consider there. He's tended to go with Gabriel Sara in that advanced position behind Josh Sargent. But of course, with the frustrating results there have been in recent weeks, there may be a temptation for Wagner to change what he does on the road. This is what I think he'll do without further ado. So I've gone for Angus Gunn in goal, Jack Stacey at right back, Grant Hanley and Ben Gibson at centre back, with Dimitris Yannoulis at left back, Gabriel Sara and Kenny McLean in the centre of midfield, with Christian Fasnacht on the right, Borja Sainz on the left and Ashley Barnes behind Josh Sargent up front. And although I normally take you through the lineup and why I've picked certain players in certain positions, I'm sure you're all familiar with that lineup from Saturday's 1-0 win over Sunderland, and it sort of picks itself. So I'm going to skip straight ahead to that decision that I spoke about Wagner needing to make in terms of home versus away, starting Gabriel Sara in that advanced position or keeping Ashley Barnes in there. And the main reason I think he doesn't have much of a choice is Marcelino Nunez injury situation. He did say in his pre-match press conference that Nunez would be sort of touch and go as to whether he was available for this one, but he's not a manager, unless it's Kenny McLean, obviously, as he outlined at the weekend, that usually errs on the side of taking a risk when that's the case. He spoke previously about Nunez being back for the Rotherham game, so I'd be surprised if he chucks him in based on his assessment so far. And we know how vital he is if that system is to work. They don't really have a player in there that can do that to the same extent. We know he likes Jakob Sorensen, and to be fair, Sorensen has shown some of his best midfield performances under Wagner, but he doesn't seem to have quite that level of trust in the centre of midfield at the moment. There's also Liam Gibbs, who I actually think could play to probably a slightly lower quality, that Nunez role. But as we know and have debated continuously, of course, he's seen as more of an attacking player. He was used on the wing at the weekend by Wagner, so it feels unlikely that he slots into that role. And then you look at it and just wonder whether Wagner really has the options to make it work unless he sort of pushes Nunez into midfield. I also think there will be a temptation on his part. I know he's been talking about the fact that you win your games at home, draw away, but with the carrot so close of getting into that top 6 and the teams around them sort of faltering, I wonder if he will just be slightly tempted to go a little bit more adventurous, given the fact that, of course, they've struggled away from home in recent weeks. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why that was, about maybe the differences that there has been in the Norwich setup away from home. And there are some positives, to be fair, as well as negatives. You look at the fact that Sara is in that sort of number 10 role, and back at that Blackburn game, there were plenty of times where actually he was in the best position to send Sargent through. He played one absolutely fantastic through ball for Sargent that the American will probably be disappointed he didn't score. And there were also other opportunities where probably the Brazilian should have actually found him through on goal. So it does get actually probably the best offensive passer in the team into those advanced areas, but it doesn't quite create the level of space for Sargent that there is when an Ashley Barnes is in there, because part of the reason why that duo works so well together is because Barnes is willing to drop deep, to peel off defenders, to move around, and that certainly creates the space for Sargent to then go in behind. And although there does feel a bit of a discrepancy at times, because those midfielders that can play those passes in Kenny McLean and Gabriel Sara are a little bit deeper, and they do probably have to play slightly more difficult passes to find Sargent in behind, there is that space created that allows him to get away with the attention, of maybe a couple less defenders. You looked at that Blackburn game that I mentioned, and Of course, he was getting in behind more often, but it felt like he was having to hold off 2 or 3 defenders. Whereas at Carrow Road, they get into a situation where, with Barnes taking a defender away or moving that defence around, it's often Sargent in a race against one defender. And we know with his physical attributes that he's going to be the favourite for that one. So it's sort of a situation where Wagner will be trying to get the best of both worlds. If you're trying to go completely offensive, it's probably having Ashley Barnes and Josh Sargent both up there, with Sarah in a sort of number 10 role and a diamond. And I know that was a favourite under Paul Lambert, but we're probably in the situation now and in the time where that is just slightly too offensive to be successful in football, given how packed out midfields tend to be. So Wagner is in a little bit of a catch-22 situation here, but you just look at the results and what's worked, and at Carrow Road is where they've of course been their best. And although I think we can all understand the benefits of being close to home and having your home fans behind you, at the end of the day it is still 11v11 on a very similarly dimensioned football pitch, and it shouldn't be quite the level of discrepancy that there is. So I think that's a problem that Wagner sort of needs to solve. What could play into his hands on Wednesday night is the fact that Middlesbrough do really struggle to defend counter-attacks. They like to dominate, they like to play short passes and have the ball in the opposition half, especially at home, but they have been vulnerable when they lose the ball to turnovers and to quick transitions. And I think that's where we could see Norwich sort of take advantage of that. So in that sense, maybe Wagner will sort of go back to the tried and tested away method. And although I think a point actually wouldn't be too bad a result at Middlesbrough, which is always a difficult place to go, which is probably a step up in difficulty on those Blackburn and QPR games. It feels like that could even be the way for them to go and win the game. But it's about getting enough legs up and around Josh Sargent. Of course, they've now lost Ono Hernandez and Jonathan Rowe. So really, you're looking at those sort of attacking players, and it feels like maybe Borja Sainz is the only one that could keep up with Sargent and help him out in those attacks. So there does feel like whatever way you go, there are weaknesses for Norwich, and there are struggles that they will, of course, have to deal with. But that's the job of a football manager, and it will be very interesting to see, of course, at the Riverside Stadium, how Wagner tries to combat those issues and tries to get around them. Of course, Norwich don't have a great record there, but they're in good form. Middlesbrough aren't in such good form. Wagner was at pains to tell everyone at the press conference that it was still going to be a difficult task. So definitely no pushover for Norwich. They'll have to be on it, but there are opportunities based on Middlesbrough's tactical shortcomings this season that they can exploit. Thank you for joining me on Tactics Board. Of course, we'll have every kick covered of the game across our Pinken channels. So go to our socials, go to pinken.com, go to pinken.com/subscribe if you're not already subscribed, for plenty of subscriber exclusive content. Easy for me to say. And of course, at the top of all of our social media feeds, I think our WhatsApp channel is pinned. So join that and get all the latest Norwich City updates straight to your phone. Thank you for joining me again on Tactics Board. I promise I'm finished plugging now, and hopefully we are talking next time after another what would be huge win in Norwich City's push for the Championship playoffs. See you then.